Why is the story of Ruth an important story, and why does it come after the book of Judges? There are only 4 chapters in this book. The first verse of chapter 1 says, "Now it came to pass in the days when the judges ruled that there was a famine in the land, and a certain man of Bethlehem, Judah, went to live in the country of Moab, he and his wife and his 2 sons. The name of the man was Elimelech, and his wife's name was Naomi." This story took place in the days when the judges ruled, so the appropriate place to put the book of Ruth would come after the book of Judges, but before the book of 1 Samuel, which is the beginning of the Kings. While Elimelech and his family were living in Moab, he died, and his 2 sons died. The wives of the 2 sons were named Orpah and Ruth. Naomi decided to move back to their home in Bethlehem, for the famine had ended, and the 2 daughters-in-law left with Naomi to go back to Judah. But Naomi spoke to Orpah and Ruth and told them to go back to their homes in Moab. They resisted at first, but Naomi told them they needed to return back home because she didn't have any more sons for them to marry. Orpah made the decision to return back home, but Ruth would not leave Naomi, saying, "Entreat me not to leave thee, or to return from following after thee. For whither thou goest I will go, and where thou lodgest I will lodge. Thy people shall be my people, and thy God my God. Where thou diest I will die, and there will I be buried. The Lord do so to me, and more also, if anything but death part thee and me." So Naomi didn't argue with her, and they went on their way to Bethlehem, and it was the beginning of the barley harvest. One of Elimelech's relatives, named Boaz, had a field of grain that was being harvested, and Ruth said to Naomi, "Let me go and glean grain from the field after the reapers are finished." Now, under the Old Testament law, the reapers at harvest time were not to harvest the corners of their fields, but they were to leave some grain for the poor. So after the reapers were finished with the harvesting, the poor or widows would come in and glean the grain that was left. Ruth was in the field gleaning when Boaz came along, and seeing her, asked the chief servant, "Who is the woman?" The servant replied that she was the Moabite daughter-in-law of Naomi's, and she had asked if she could glean from the field. Boaz then spoke to Ruth and told her not to glean in any other fields, but stay there and glean. Because Ruth had found favor in Boaz's eyes, she bowed down and said, "Why have I found grace in thine eyes, that thou should take knowledge of me, seeing I am a stranger?" And Boaz answered, it had been shown to him all that she had done for her mother-in-law since the death of her husband, and how she had left her family and country to live with Naomi. Boaz saw that she trusted in the Lord, and he asked her to come eat with him and the reapers, and she sat beside the reapers. When she rose up to leave, Boaz told the reapers to let her glean throughout the field, and they were to even pull out some of the sheaves' grain for her to gather easily. He told Ruth to stay by the reapers until the harvest was over. So Ruth stayed close to the maidens of Boaz until the end of the barley harvest and of the wheat harvest, and she lived with Naomi. Because Boaz is a kinsman of Naomi's, Ruth could become the wife of Boaz if the first-in-line kinsman did not want to marry her. That was the case, as we will see. When Boaz had finished eating and drinking for the evening, he laid down by the grain. As Naomi had instructed Ruth, she laid down at his feet. When he awoke in the middle of the night and saw that she was there, she told him, "I am Ruth thy handmaid. Spread your skirt over your handmaid, for you are a near kinsman." What she had just done was not just a proposal, but she was informing him of his duty as a kinsman, which was to redeem the widow, which the law required. He did wish to redeem her, but the nearest of kin must have the first opportunity. He approached the kinsman who was nearer, and they discussed the parcel of land which their brother had owned. The near kinsman did not want to redeem the land until Boaz told him, "The woman Ruth went with the land. She must be redeemed as well." He did not want to redeem the woman because it would mar his own inheritance. So he took off his shoe and gave it to Boaz to confirm this agreement. Having done this in front of 10 elders, it was a testament in Israel. So Boaz and Ruth had a son and named him Obed, who is the father of Jesse, who is the father of David, who was the second king of Israel, and was the great-grandson of Ruth and Boaz. It was through this lineage that Jesus would be born. The significance of the book of Ruth is that a Gentile bride married a Jewish man, just as the Gentile church is the bride of Jesus Christ. There are many interesting parallels to future prophecy in the story of Ruth. Boaz tells Ruth to eat with him and the reapers. She was to sit with the reapers. Matthew 13:39 tells us the harvest is the end of the age, the reapers are the angels. This seems to tell us that the bride of Christ will be sitting with the angels during the harvest. Will that be on the earth, or will we be sitting with the angels in heaven while the reaping is going on at the end of the tribulation? Revelation 14:14 seems to say that it is Christ who will come with a sickle and reap, evidently the rest of the harvest, because the next angel that has a sickle gathers the wicked to be cast into the great winepress of the wrath of God. Boaz says to Ruth in 2:21, "Stay by my young men until they have ended the harvest." This was to be until the end of the barley harvest and the wheat harvest. Ruth stayed close to glean with the maidens of Boaz, and she lived with her mother-in-law Naomi, whose name means my joy, or my bliss, or pleasantness of Jehovah. The barley harvest was between Passover and Pentecost. The wheat harvest was between Pentecost and Feast of Tabernacles, which was the end of all harvest.